Okay, it's 11:03, so good morning and welcome everybody to the Zoom launch of the new strategy for Together Active. The Zoom launch is a bit like launching a ship without a bottle of champagne. So we're just hoping it'll get off the slipway and get into the ocean, so to speak. The strategy that we're launching has taken us 12 months to develop. Been a lot of listening, a lot of talking, lots of sharing, a lot of caring, and certainly a lot of drafting and redrafting and designing. We hope we're able to deliver a meaningful, very focused, real set of challenges ahead. It's been a tremendous effort gone into this, and we certainly couldn't have done it without the support of partners, many of whom are around the computer this morning. And to do that during the pandemic as well is quite an achievement. So I want to thank you for your contributions thus far, and to thank you for joining us this morning. We certainly hope to work with you in the future, and we hope that we can do more to get more people active in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. There are many, many, many challenges ahead, shared across different parts of our communities. So in order to achieve something, we need to be much more focused, targeted, refined, and certainly lots of energy and pace. Thank you for all you've done for us so far, and we hope you're going to enjoy this morning. It's a 4-year strategy. I sometimes call it a 1+3. The first year is obviously post-COVID or during COVID, and then who knows what the next 3 years are going to look like after that. Hopefully by then, everybody will have been jabbed and jabbed and jabbed forever. So without further ado, I want to hand over to Jude to get into the details of the strategy. And I'll wrap the meeting up at the end, certainly no later than 12 o'clock. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Malcolm. Hopefully you can all see me now. We started thinking about this strategy launch towards the end of the year, and at that point we've got real high hopes of having an event with maybe a breakfast launch. There was going to be coffee and pastries, lots of social interaction, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. But I'm really hoping that sometime soon we can be in a room together and at least you've got a hot drink to hand. So today is very much about the future, but you'll indulge me, if you would, to just take a bit of time to reflect on the past 12 months, because as the slide says, it really has been a year like no other. And I think, when I consider packing up my desk in that mid-March period, getting ready to work from home, we could have never anticipated that we would be facing one of the biggest global public health challenges to face the world for over 100 years. And of course, the impact of the pandemic has been wide-reaching and significant on the strategy and on the sector. And I don't think I overstate it when I say I don't believe that sport and physical activity will be delivered in the same way again. There's been some really hard and difficult things to observe over the last 12 months. For me particularly, I found it really hard to see the club and community structures struggling to survive through a series of lockdowns. And there has been great resilience and innovation there. But we won't know the impact of that, of how many organisations just weren't able to sustain themselves through the pandemic for a few months yet. Many of people on the call will be really familiar with the challenges facing public leisure provision. You'll understand the significant financial pressures that I'm sure we're going to take through for many years to come, and the real implications of that in terms of potential job losses and rationalisation of facilities and services, which will no doubt have a huge impact locally. We've even seen our professional sports and structures suffer. An Olympics has been, and a Paralympics has been delayed by 12 months. A good pub quiz, the last time that was happened was in World War II. So there you go, I'll give you that one for free. However, there has been huge positives as well. And I think one of the things that I feel really strongly was it was a real privilege to observe how the sector and people in this room pivoted and they innovated and they found solutions to problems, which really put sport and physical activity and our whole sector right in the centre of Recovery Renewal agenda. And I've never felt prouder to do the work that we do. And that is thanks to the Herculean effort of everyone on this call today. There's also been a really interesting shift in narrative, I feel. So thinking back to Boris Johnson's first press briefings at the start of the pandemic, he spoke about exercise being one of 4 permissible things that we could do, as important as food shopping and receiving medicines. And I felt like that really kind of filtered through into public psyche. You know, I'm sure I wasn't the only one that looked out the window in those few glorious sunny months, and it felt like there was streams of people walking and cycling, children on scooters, and I felt like we were riding the crest of this incredible wave where people really were relishing the opportunity to be in their local area but move through it. And that was incredible to see. We saw, you know, you could not buy a second-hand bike or gym equipment. And that first PE with Joe session, nearly 1 million young people joined that live on that first day. So as I said, it felt like there was this huge movement happening. As the months have gone on, we've come to understand that hid some of the more concerning pictures, that there were swathes of people for whom the pandemic meant that physical activity just was simply beyond their reach, that the barriers that were too great and that they were mounting. If you had a long-term health condition, if you were from an ethnically diverse community, if you were somebody who was living with a health condition or was facing financial hardship, you were less likely to be engaging in physical activity, which at a time like this was so important. And really, those are the people that set the context for this strategy. It's with them in mind that we've decided that we need to step up on a number of things that we do. Next slide, please. And there the strategy was born. And I understand that Lottie emailed the strategy document around last night. And I hope that many of you have had a chance to read it. And when you've read it, you felt that your voice was really clear within it. Because as Malcolm said at the start of the presentation, this has just been a collective effort and the summary of conversations that we've had, not only through those formal engagement opportunities, but through every conversation we've had in the last 4 years. I hope that you can feel that your voice is really strong within this. There were some really clear mandates and really clear directions you gave to us through that consultation. And I want to kind of make the point that we've heard them. You told us that we needed to be more focused and we needed to be clearer. You told us to take our role as an advocate and a systems leader and a lobbyist more seriously. You asked us to dial up our role as a broker and continue to provide high quality information, advice and guidance. But the most important thing you told us that we needed to listen. We needed to listen to you, and we needed to listen most importantly to the people for whom we were trying to affect the change. And those create the absolute foundations and the cornerstones for this strategy. Through those conversations, I felt a real responsibility, and I know the team have to step up, and hence the birth of the strategy. The vision of the work that we're trying to achieve is active lives through healthy futures, working together to create active places and healthy lives through physical activity and sport. Next slide, please. So you won't be surprised, and you will have all done this yourselves when embarking on any strategy exercise. It's really important to take the time to understand the context of where we are now. And again, you know, there is huge amounts to be positive about. Our community infrastructure is really solid. And as I said in my opening address, time will tell what that looks like in the summer of this year and into next year. But going into the pandemic, didn't matter where you lived in Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire, you could be reasonably confident that there was an offer for you. And actually what's been really interesting in the last 12 months is actually understanding that the scope of our network was far wider reaching than we'd imagined. We'd uncovered all of these organisations who didn't have sport and physical activity as their primary purpose, but they had a real strong offer in this space, whether that's a youth group with a table tennis table in the back of the hall, or a librarian who's leading a guided walk, or a day centre who's delivering seated exercise to clients. All of those people have got a crucial role to play in provision of sport and physical activity, and we're extraordinarily lucky to have them. I often talk about how lucky we are to be working within the boundaries of Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire for the fact of our blue and green spaces. It doesn't matter where you live, even in our more urban areas, there is reasonably strong access to amazing green and blue spaces. Now, yes, some of that access could be facilitated. Yes, we need a stronger mechanisms to help communities feel safe and to feel empowered to engage in those spaces, but the bones of what we need is there. This third piece about the recognition of the broader value of sport and activity is really interesting to me. And if you'd have asked me kind of 4 years ago about the types of conversations I was having with partners, it was very much about educating people around those benefits to the economy, to skills, to employability, to education, to crime prevention, to physical and mental well-being, really trying to sell the importance of sport and physical activity in those spaces. And what I'd say is that those conversations have moved on, and increasingly we've been invited into other agendas and other sectors to have the discussion about what sport and physical activity can bring to the table. And that sea change really puts us in a very, very strong position indeed. Our professional workforce, and that's you, that's absolutely the people on the call today. You know, I spoke about this earlier, but the skill and the commitment and just the absolute passion that we have in our workforce here in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent is an asset that we just cannot underestimate. And I think that will be key to unlocking some of what we're trying to achieve through the life of the strategy. And the other thing is our resilient networks. And again, that's something that's really come to light over the last 12 months, whether you're a part of the PALS group or the PAF group, or whether you're a community group who's just reaching out to a neighbour, we've seen the strength of those networks in terms of information sharing, improvement and support. And we know that that will be absolutely crucial going forward. However, that's not to say that we are without our challenges. And Lottie's put together a very short video that will pull out some of the things that were highlighted in the strategy document. So if you could play that, please, Hazel. Thanks for that. Now, there was meant to be sound with that video, and it's a real shame that we couldn't hear it, because I've always said that Lottie, if she ever leaves Together Active, she has absolutely got a career in voiceover. She's got the most perfect voice. So we will share that video after today, and you'll be able to get the full experience of the narration that was included there. But hopefully you were able to take from it what we intended. You know, and I think some of the things, looking at some of those statistics, you know, they're nothing short of shocking in some instances. And I think, you know, what's really important is we take a moment to consider the individuals behind those numbers and those statistics, and just the broad range of impact that some of those things are having on people's day-to-day lives. So some really important considerations there. This trend in inactivity is something that has existed in Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire for over 10 years. And, you know, although it fluctuates slightly, typically we are above the national and regional averages in terms of inactivity. Now, when we talk about inactivity, we're talking about somebody doing less than 30 minutes activity over the course of a week. And that can be split into 10-minute chunks. And it can include, you know, any exercise that gets you breathless, which means you could talk, but you probably couldn't sing. So a brisk walk, housework, etc. So these people are working almost hard to be inactive, and it just shows the scale of the challenge that we're facing. This has resulted in huge pressures in our health and social care systems. And again, this isn't a situation that's unique to Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire. We've seen a rise in obesity and lifestyle conditions, such as diabetes, cancers, frailty, increase in falls in older adults, all of which could be prevented to some degree by a more active lifestyle. We know that parts of our population have been left behind, and consistently certain population groups are not doing enough physical activity and sport to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And I suppose the final point is we just have too little information about the lives of these people and the reasons why they're not engaging in the way that we'd hoped. And that absolutely is an aspiration for us as we move through the strategy. Next slide, please. So what are we going to do? Who's this strategy for? I'm really delighted that the board and the staff team have agreed a really bold step in terms of focusing 80% of our resource, both financial and from a staff perspective, on the inactive community. And I think that will feel a lot different from some of the things that we've provided previously, where we've had a more universal approach, but we're very much hoping that you will come with us on this journey to unlocking some of these stubborn and entrenched behaviours and really supporting those people who need us the most. When we started to try and unpick the picture of who was inactive in Staffordshire, firstly, we found it was really hard to do because the data just isn't that robust. But what we did find was that there were two population groups within our active populations that featured really predominantly. One was those experiencing financial hardships, and the second were those with health conditions and disabilities. And we felt that we really need to shape a strategy up around those people. The other thing that we became really aware about was the strategic need to support children and young people in or on the cusp of social care, or again, in or on the cusp of the youth offending system. And those are things that we've been working on over the last 4 years. And we heard from you that there was a real need for us to continue and indeed dial up our work in that space. Next slide, please. So what are we trying to achieve through this strategy? And I'm not going to read these things out verbatim, but essentially what we're trying to achieve is longer and healthier lives, a more effective use of physical activity around the prevention and management of long-term health conditions, systems which are strong and effective around physical activity and sport, and a partnership approach to tackling the inequalities that exist in participation in sport and physical activity. Next slide, please. So what are we going to do? The $100 million question. We spent a lot of time looking at our potential delivery plan and how we might organise ourselves behind the strategy. And we came up with these 4 discrete areas of work. And some of this might feel really familiar from the last strategy. As Malcolm iterated earlier on in his opening address, we absolutely see that we have got this period of 12 months where we really want your permission to work in a different way, to try things that might be new and different and even high risk, that we might not succeed in, but that we are committed to having this iterative learning process and to build a programme of delivery over the next 4 years, which we can be really confident in. Next slide, please. So if we think about achieving a more active Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire, I think it's fair to say we're not going to be able to do that with just investment and intervention and even goodwill alone. It's not going to be enough. And some of the learning that we've done over the last 4 years have been what really makes a change on a large scale is creating really productive systems around an agenda. And that requires a certain set of conditions. It requires us to achieve collaborative leadership. It requires us to build coalitions and agree on a set of behaviours and values which we want to share in terms of delivering some of this work. But perhaps the most important thing, I feel, is having a consensus about the role that physical and activity and sport can play around certain agendas. Now, this new work isn't new to us. A really good example and a live example is the work that we're doing with Staffordshire County Council and community partners in 4 locations around a systems approach to obesity. We're starting that work in Staffordshire Moorlands, and really what that does is it brings together a collection of partners and interested parties to design a system which really works for the people that we're trying to address, excess weight and obesity, and really putting physical activity and sport as the heart of some of the solutions facing those problems. We've also worked really hard around a system around youth offending, and I'm really, really delighted to welcome 2 partners to the call today, Claire from our team and Simon Woollett from Staffordshire County Council, to describe some work that we've been doing within the youth offending system.
Good morning, I'm Claire Greenwood from Together Active.
My name's Simon Woollett. I'm Operations Manager with the Staffordshire Youth Offending Service. We work with children on the fringes of the criminal justice system and those involved in the criminal justice system. And driven by an initiative from our head of service, we wanted to encourage and facilitate the children we work with to be more active. But the starting point was to look at some barriers, and some of these Jude has already referred to. Some of these will be kind of universal, but they may be a little more acute for the children and families we work with. So there's clearly financial, there's transport, there's clothing, equipment, lack of a role model within a family, their influences of friends and peers, their general health and diet. Some of the characteristics which may be a little more applicable to the children we work with is often they've experienced a series of exclusions from the education system, which means they wouldn't have a maybe structured PE or activity lesson in a week. I know some pupil referral units try and build this in, but if they have got a limited timetable, it can be difficult. There's a lack of knowledge of opportunities. Some of the children we work with have a very limited kind of world view. The world is kind of their estate, and they're unaware of what else kind of possibly they can get involved in. There's a potential impact on if they have any conditions or any traits of any conditions. Those would be familiar, kind of ADHD, autism. There's an impact, an increase in awareness of childhood experiences, how that affects children, building relationships with their confidence, attachments, and how they see the world. And there is a kind of perception maybe that, I don't know, leisure centres, community centres, clubs are not for them, and they have been excluded from those during their life. And also some of our children's lifestyle wouldn't necessarily facilitate kind of being active all the time. There may be a lack of sleep, a lack of kind of regular diet, which obviously would not kind of facilitate general activities. Other ways we can limit. There is a perception that children who offend shouldn't be mixed with ordinary children, whatever ordinary children are. There is some kind of perception around risk, depending on what their offence is. There can be a feeling that if a child has been involved in a violent offence, they're always going to be violent. There's not an appreciation of certain circumstances, or that behaviour is only limited to a certain time in their lives. There was acknowledgement from us that we needed to incorporate it into our assessments. We needed to ask the questions, and we needed to think of how we can sustain any kind of activities that we do get involved with. So these considerations we kind of started to think about, and that's when the kind of partnership started to develop. So I'll hand over to Claire to discuss that.
Yeah, we'd been working as a partnership with John at the Commissioner's Office for a couple of years on a project with Looked After Children, and this led us to get involved with the Home Office funded Safer Together Through Sport, led by Street Games nationally, but designed and delivered by us locally here in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. An initial engagement day of around 40 people, a real mixture across from officers from youth offending teams, community sport, local authorities, community safety partnerships. And that initial engagement day led to the development of a county steering group, which is led and chaired by Hazel Williamson, who is the head of the Staffordshire Youth Offending Service, but she's also the chair of the National Association of Youth Offending Team Managers. Representatives on that group include youth offending services from Staffordshire and on Stoke-on-Trent, police, Street Games, Together Active, us, and representatives from our local authority and leisure trusts, and some of our community deliverers as well that have been working on some of the programmes. And the project tasked us here in Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent with developing and piloting a referral pathway from youth offending service through to community sport. And initially we piloted that with the Space Summer Programme, and it was all evaluated by Loughborough University. At Together Active, we've been helping to coordinate the community sport elements of that work. So we've done things like we've brokered discussions with some of Simon's team in the East and some of our space leads, looking at the practicalities of how you refer young people into the space programme, what your space programme could look like, and how the young people in the youth justice system can influence some of those space activities. We've facilitated speed dating sessions with some of the youth offending teams and some of our community sport deliverers, and we were ably assisted by teams in East Staffordshire, Lichfield and Tamworth to do that. And we tested out and piloted the the referral pathway with the Earliest Help team in Newcastle-under-Lyme. So that was an interesting project as well. Amongst all of that, we've helped to link our satellite club funding to pupil referral unit programmes, to some of the antisocial behaviour projects all over Staffordshire and Stoke, and some YOS specific projects as well, particularly in Stoke. It's fair to say we couldn't have done any of this without the skills and on-the-ground knowledge and experience of colleagues in leisure, in some of the leisure trusts and local authority, who work so closely with their community safety partnerships. Our community clubs and the police and the Commissioner's offices have been fantastic in supporting this work. And I think a really good example of that collaboration was the little bit of work we did in Uttoxeter, Simon. I think is it nearly 18 months ago now? It's certainly before the pandemic struck, but it was a really good collaboration of everyone within that town and partners coming together.
Yeah, there was some identified concerns about a group of children causing kind of some antisocial behaviour. They tended to hang around kind of Asda in the car park. When we kind of looked into it, there was a shelter, there was compost bags, and there was access to Wi-Fi. So it wasn't really surprising that, you know, that was the place of choice. Apparently Asda can't move compost bags because that's the law, apparently. But what we decided was, with the help of kind of the manager at the local leisure centre, we kind of looked at an open day, and we kind of transported some children that we were working with, but also invited their friends, because you know, for it to be sustainable, we felt, you know, that they needed to bring their friends along. So they met kind of with the manager and some other providers to tell them what they would like, and also to see the leisure centre, because some of them had never kind of been into the leisure centre. They hadn't seen the kind of weights room, they hadn't seen the facilities there, they hadn't seen the kind of gym environment. And so from that, I think a couple kind of did join the gym, and also there was some activities developed at a local park, and this was also in kind of association with the kind of local police as well. And I think there was some basketball sessions in the evening and some football sessions that were put on, and that was at the request of the children who come in, so they could see that there was a direct kind of impact of, they were kind of suggested this and then it happened, which was really important. Obviously since then, with obviously the restrictions everyone's aware of, we have kind of looked at a more kind of individual kind of working, and as June said, the kind of initial lockdown, you could not buy dumbbells for love or money. I'm sure eBay, there's a big market at the moment, but so we was buying kind of the exercise rubber bands, so children could work out at home. Once we started seeing children, we do lots of walking, getting them out the house, trying to walk and talk at the same time, because you know, he's a bit less in your face and kind of stuff. We've got a member of staff who did a kind of circuit training on video on YouTube, and we sent that out so they could do that at home. So now, obviously, as things are opening up, we're looking to take some of the learning from pre-lockdown and get our children involved in more kind of structured, organised activities, which I think, Claire, you're going to talk about. There's some potentially exciting developments coming up.
Yes, definitely. A number of us have pitched in to support a one-year post, funding for a one-year post. And that post will be a sport youth offending officer. So it'll be somebody based right in the heart of the youth offending team, of Simon's team, to support the team to link their young people with community sport opportunities out and about in the communities, to use the referral pathway to do that. And as Together Active, we're really committed. We've committed a little bit of funding to the post, but we've also committed and set aside a little bit of delivery funding as well, so that person and the young people can really get involved in some of the fantastic activities and some of the amazing providers that we've got spread across our county in Stoke-on-Trent. So we're really excited that this piece of work has got a place in our strategy. And, you know, we're hoping that this year coming, we can get that person in post sort of before the summer holidays and get cracking, but really get some stuff moving. But there's been some amazing learning this last couple of years, and we'd really like to take that forward. So I think that's it from us. Thank you, Simon, and back to Jude.
Thanks, Claire. And I'd just like to reiterate Claire's point about thanking everyone who's been involved in that project. And I know some of you might be on the call today. What a fantastic example of achieving that kind of shared consensus and purpose, listening to the people who are affected by those issues and intervening in a way that required a number of different organisations to work together to intervene in a system, really. And I just feel hugely proud of that work and absolutely proud of everything that Claire's achieved from Together Active's perspective. So thank you, Claire, for that. So on to our next strand then, stepping up for the environment. And for me, you know, this is the single biggest opportunity for us as an organisation. I think if we can create physical environments where being active is just the easy and obvious choice, then we're going to make great strides in terms of changing some of these entrenched behaviours around physical activity. And yes, that's around green and blue infrastructure, it's around our built environment, it's about our leisure environment, it's the whole piece and how we bring it together. I'm really delighted that for the first time we've got some dedicated staff resource in this area. So Jackie Brennan, who some of you may now have met or have worked with in the past, who's really driving this work forward at pace for us. I think if you look at the actions on the slides there, you'll perhaps see that this is perhaps a different approach for us in terms of the way that we intend to work in this space. And we definitely feel that here we have a role in terms of a consultee, in terms of an advisor, an influencer, a supporter. And we're very cognizant that it is a busy space with many different partners operating, and we want to be respectful of that. Despite us taking that kind of secondary role, I suppose, to this work, we know when the opportunity to intervene in a place comes along, then we absolutely should take it. To create a community space which is owned and used by those local people, and to engage with landowners in perhaps a different way than we've done previously. And a really good example of that project is the wayfinding project that we've recently been successful in securing £200,000 worth of investment from Sport England. The project really was built on some insight that was presented to us by community partners and IHL who operate down in Cannock Chase. And it was hearing that many of the people who lived in the Hensford community just didn't feel like Cannock Chase was a place for them. Despite having this amazing natural infrastructure on their doorstep, their reasons for not engaging with it were multiple, everything from accessibility to a fear of crime and antisocial behaviour. The funding has allowed us to work on a project which intends to directly connect that community with that space. We intend to intervene in two ways. One, to provide an upgrade to the infrastructure that already exists in that place. So we're undertaking work to improve the trails themselves, to make them accessible to buggies and wheelchair users. We're improving and increasing the signposting and the signage along that place, and we're designing a number of rest stops to allow people to perch, catch their breath, to hand out those all-important snacks to little people. But the crucial part about this programme is it's been co-designed with the community. So they will have the opportunity to design these rest stops, to bring in local art installations. We're also using digital technology to include a number of QR codes along the route. So this will allow people to scan a mobile phone and get information, everything ranging from local history, from the environment, ways to get more active. And there'll even be an opportunity for mums and dads to engage little people in stories and games, which will keep them occupied on that those walks, which as a mother, I can say is a very much needed thing. So we're really excited about that project. We're working in collaboration with a number of partners, Cannock Chase, District Council, the County Council, IHL, a number of community partners. And we're really excited about the impact that's going to have. We're not only going to measure the usage of that space, but we're also going to try and assess the impact that has on the health and well-being of the individuals using it. So a really good illustration of how we can use an environment to encourage people to be more active. Next slide, please. So communities and people, and this is definitely the most substantial part of the work that we intend to do. We want to mobilise a network of professional and volunteer workforce around this strategy, creating many different channels into physical activity and sport. And we're going to do that in a number of different ways. In the example of healthcare professionals, we're currently working with Public Health England in the delivery of their clinical champions training. It's a peer-to-peer led programme which provides with clinicians information about having a conversations with patients around physical activity and building in physical activity into routine clinical care. In addition, we're about to roll out a significant training event to social prescribers and key link workers across Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. In fact, all of the link workers and social prescribers who are employed by VCSE organisations are attending the event. And that will give them the skills and experience to talk to clients about how they might incorporate physical activity in sport as a solution to some of the challenges that they may be facing from a wellbeing perspective or indeed a health perspective. The other part of that is about how we can signpost into our offer and how we make sure that people providing that offer, whether that be in a community space or in a public or private leisure provision, are ready to receive those referrals. And we'll be delivering a significant programme of training and support for those organisations who wish to work with individuals who may have long-term health conditions or other problems. One of the things that we're really committed to doing is supporting organisations to survive the pandemic and really working with organisations that have got a really strong link into some of the priority groups that we've spoken about. And I'm really delighted to have Shawn and Lottie here today to talk about some of the fantastic work that Hoop Skills are delivering in the county.
Hello, lovely to be here today. So I'm Lottie from Together Active. I'm speaking to Shawn Jameson, who's the Managing Director of Hoop Skills, which is a basketball club based at Stoke College. Shawn, can you tell us first a little bit about the work that you're doing through Hoop Skills?
Oh yes, what we're doing is we're giving the kids an opportunity to better themselves and be positive contributors in society through sports. You know, we have a team of kids, say about 30 plus, and you know, on a given Friday, as we know, kids can be doing whatever on a Friday, but we get them off the streets. We give them structure, you know, in their favorite sports, which is to be basketball.
It's really great the work that you're doing. Why is it that you think that young people should be physically active? How do you think it benefits them?
I think it benefits them. Well, in the times that we are in now, it gives them a focus and something to do with the pandemic and everything that's going on. You know, what I'm experiencing is, you know, if it wasn't, I get this from kids all the time. If it wasn't for us, they wouldn't know which way to turn, or because they were inactive. Okay, so yeah. During this whole thing, you know, we stayed active through help with you guys to provide certain things that the kids needed to succeed.
Yeah, and it has been a particularly challenging year, and some of that help that we were able to give you was through the TIF funding. So how was that? How did you use that to help you through?
Oh, that was a blessing. I mean, it let us, it provided us the use of PPE, I think is that correct? PPE materials that we needed to, you know, to put on sessions, to put on Zoom sessions, to, you know, to do all types of things to keep these guys and girls, you know, mind straight. You know what I mean? For the mental health part of it, because like I said before, some of these kids didn't know which way they were going to turn. So again, it was just a blessing that we were given, excuse me, giving them the opportunity, you know, to focus on something different. We gave them another pathway. So that grant, TIF grant, it was very helpful to us.
I'm really glad to hear that. Have you got any examples of some of the successes you've had with young people who've joined your club?
Oh yes, it's been many. What we've taken kids from Stoke that had little bit of no basketball experiences, and they've come through our program. We've built them up, we've trained them, and now I got three guys that's come from Hoop Skills. They're in the United States on scholarships at major universities and major junior colleges in the U.S. So I mean, you know, that's great news, and it's like I said, that lets you know that, you know, with the kids, that if you work towards something, it can happen, and those guys are shining examples of that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing in the local area. We really appreciate it.
No problem, and I would like to thank you guys.
Thank you. I think that's us.
Thanks, guys. And, you know, that just is such a strong illustration of the importance of young people having a safe place to go and be, and also just the impact that can have on a young person's life, both in the present moment but into the future. And Shawn, you're just doing an amazing job, so keep at it. So our last piece around advice, influence, information. And interestingly, this was the thing that came out most predominantly during the consultation about the importance of our role in this space, about being that person that can unpick guidelines, whether that be about regulations on lockdowns or lockdowns easing, or whether that's connecting club with a variety of funding opportunities, or whether advising an individual on an opportunity to be active locally. And we've really heard that through the last 4 years, and we're committed to doing this better. And one of the most exciting projects I believe that we're working on as an organisation is Active My Way. Now, Active My Way is a customer-facing platform which uses open source data to pull information about physical activity and sport into one place. It works in the same way that a hotel booking site like Trivago or Just Eat, any of the many of those kind of platforms that you use regularly, that is drawing information from other sources, giving an accurate, up-to-date picture in one place about what's available. I'll get Lottie to drop into the chat function the link to the site, and I do encourage you all to go and look at it. We'll support this with campaigns and try to innovate in the way that we connect with inactive people across the county and the city area. Next slide, please. I suppose the final thing to say is the importance of partnerships. And through all of those things we've discussed today, you'll see that we intend to build coalitions and work truly in collaboration. And that is absolutely the mandate for this strategy. And we know that we are not going to be able to get towards any of these really aspirational targets we've set ourselves without you, the people on the call today. We're also really clear that any intervention that we make will be grounded in community engagement. Nothing for people without them, and we are absolutely committed to doing that. We will only seek to add value in a place. And I suppose the final point is about thinking about how we assess our impact. And this is a really challenging area of work for us. We know a lot of what we do is really nebulous, it's really difficult to measure, but what we're determined to do is think of creative ways to articulate the work that we as a partnership are undertaking and share that with you so you can undertake your own learning and come with us on this journey. So that concludes today's presentation. I think Malcolm's going to come and just wrap up for us, but I'd like personally to thank everyone who's been on the call today, not only for attending, but for all your support that you've shown myself, the team and the board over the last 4 years. Are you there, Malcolm? Okay, I don't know whether we're just having a few technical difficulties getting Malcolm back on the call. Malcolm, are you there?
Hopefully now.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. We're back in. Thanks ever so much for all that those examples, I think to populate the policy is really useful. And I think that helps us understand where we're going. It's quite clear that as chair of the board, I'm very privileged. I'd fly in a helicopter and look at all these activities going on and see the mounds of things that you're running up and down. It's a difficult mountain to climb. It's a challenging situation, but I think as a board and as a team, we're determined to do that. But we can only do that with the help of many, many people, different creative partnerships, making things happen together. That is how we're going to make Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent a very special place to be for physical activity and sport, particularly for those people who have not had the benefits of that in the past. And that's where our energy is going to be. And we're going to drive it forwards in a way that is been clearly articulated today in the plan. So thank you very much for all of that. And I look forward to meeting you all in the real world at some point soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Malcolm. I think we've just got a couple of moments now. If anyone's got any questions, you can either raise your hand or pop them in the chat function. Is anyone feeling brave enough to join us today?
Something in the chat.
No.
Malcolm,
Okay.
Jude.
Yes, hi.
Hi, it's Mark DeVille.
Oh,
Hi,
hi, Mark.
Mark.
Firstly, Jude, it's certainly not a question. It's 2 words. Thank you for a most excellent presentation. It was absolutely superb, and it absolutely hits the right spot in many areas of consideration. But I think, Jude, the 2 areas that I really like the discussion around is the fact that this absolutely concentrates on adding value and making lives better, particularly the lives of young people. And the other area of consideration that I love is the inclusivity, that it aims at including everyone in sport and recreational activity. And this strategy, it's a superb presentation, and I thank you and thank all the presenters this morning. And it's based on our recovery from the most uncertain and probably the worst period of all our lives. I think the need and the importance of physical education and actually getting out and doing some activity is more important now than it's ever been. And I think the other, if there is a positive to come out of the pandemic, Jude, is that what the pandemic has brought out is that community spirit, that great British spirit, and the spirit of, people volunteering and community champions. So these will play a massive part in delivering this strategy, won't they? That video was brilliant. It showed the massive challenges that we face in Staffordshire and Stoke. But I know some of my colleagues from Staffordshire Moorlands are on the call, and they'll hear that it's familiar call from me asking for inclusivity, encouraging everyone to get involved. And I think Simon made the point earlier that not everyone wants to join a club. Not everyone can afford to join a gym or join a club. So certainly up in the Moorlands and other areas of Stoke and Staffordshire, we're looking at really putting out strong communication and encouraging people to get out and just enjoy the fresh air, even if you only do 10 minutes walk in the morning and 10 minutes walk in the afternoon. Do what you can and do what you can do, and that makes a real difference. And I think key to it is that, we don't all have to be a Kevin De Bruyne. Anyone can take part in sport. Anyone, although he's brilliant, anyone can take part in sport at their own level. Anyone can enjoy, and everyone should enjoy sport at their own level. And if they don't want to get involved with organised sport, then great, get on your bike, walk, enjoy the countryside. Just encourage people to do something that they want to do. So a really brilliant presentation, thank you. And I really look forward, and this will be a strategy that doesn't gather dust in somebody's desk. You know, this will be an evolving strategy and a strategy that makes real difference to people. So thank you, and thanks to Malcolm and all the presenters this morning, Jude. It's been brilliant.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for all of that. And I think you're absolutely right. Having a really big range of activity that is suitable to the needs of a whole range of people is absolutely crucial here. So I don't believe there's any more questions here. So it's just to thank you all for joining us today, and just to say I'm really excited about the next 4 years and taking this journey together as a network across Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you and goodbye.